The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Chris Oates. I'm the Regional VP of Consulting for the Southeast, based out of Greensboro. Wanted to welcome you all to our seminar this morning on reporting. It's going to be presented by Katie and Stephanie, who are both consultants on the Southeast team with us. And it is going to be hopefully an educational seminar where you can learn a lot about the software that you already have on your system. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Everybody is going to be placed on mute so that it'll keep the background noise down to a minimum. If you want to, you can submit questions. If you look in your webinar panel, there is a thing for questions that you can submit questions as well as chat. We are planning to answer those questions and gather up the answers and questions and send a list of them to everybody after the seminar is finished. That way everybody can see all the things that were asked. The presentation itself will be recorded and we'll distribute it tomorrow with a link for those people that are both on the seminar and those that could not attend. There is a one question survey at the end of the presentation, if you'd please take time to fill it out. Again, we do thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We hope you do find it informative and educational. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie to start with Explore.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to show my screen now. My name's Katie Ford, as Chris mentioned, and I'm located here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, about midway through the state. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about today was the Business Insights Explorer, which is included in Sage 100, and you can access that under each module. So here you can see accounts payable. There's an Explore, accounts receivable. There's an Explore, inventory management. You can also go up to the Business Insights module and see all of your Explore views. Now, if this is something that you've never taken advantage of, I find it to be a great tool to quickly see data and also to export cleanly into Excel. I'm sure if you have tried to export some of the normal reports into Excel, you've seen how it has all the crazy columns and the extra spacing through those. So this is a way to get data out. And I'm going to show you a very simple view, and every view behaves in the same way. It will just show you different data. So this one is under accounts receivable, and then I'm going to click on the customer view. And I'm using the ABC demo data here for our example today. So the Business Insights Explorer opens up in its own window. You still have Sage behind it in the background. And then there are several different parts of your screen. You have your data grid up here at the top. And then you have different data down here. Depending on what line you've clicked on, you'll see that the customer sales history by period changes with each click down. On your preview side over here, you can change this bottom grid. So you can show your customer contacts you have for each. You can show the payments that they've made. This is a really quick way to see what makes up some of the summary data that you're seeing. They're open invoices. the history of their invoices. There are lots of different things you can see in relation to each customer. Another neat feature is that you can say you clicked here on the current balance for this top customer. You can hit this summary button and it will, this is right here, the summary footer, and it's going to add these summary columns here at the bottom. You can then click on one of the columns and say you'd like to see the sum. So that's going to show you the current balance sum for all of your customers. If you wanted to see what is the minimum, you can choose that, the maximum, how many there are 19, or an average. And then again, you can do that in each of your columns. Just a quick way to get a total. I know a lot of times you're asked just by another member of your staff, what's our current balance? You can tell them real quickly just this way instead of running a report and doing all of those different things. If we select just one line here, the Shepherd Motor Works, if I double click on it, it's going to bring me to their history of invoices and show me a different preview. So now we're in the customer history invoices and it will show me what's on those invoices. I'm going to click back to get back where we were. And then I'm going to show you that we can also right click on Shepherd Motor Works and go to tasks to enter customer maintenance for Shepherd Motor Works. And it'll pop up your customer maintenance right there. You can also, if you've received cash from these people, you can go into your tasks and enter your cash receipts or enter a new invoice for them. It's just a quick way to action against the data that you're seeing here. One thing that I like to do with a list, you're going to have more than 19 customers. So you may want to just filter the data to only show you those customers that have an aging balance, say over $10,000. So you are a current balance. You can go to your filter builder. Choose your current balance is greater than, and then just type in 10,000. This is going to limit your list to just the 2 that meet that criteria. If you wanted to see what your total aging is for your first 2 aging categories, we can add a custom field in your grid list here by right-clicking and going to column settings. That's going to let us do 2 or 3 different things. One thing that you can do is remove all the information that you don't really care about on the report. The email address. Let's say you don't really care about the address information, you're just trying to see these balances. So you can just uncheck the columns that you don't want. You see they've disappeared here from our list. By doing it here, you don't have to do it again once you've pulled it back out into Excel. Another thing you can do is calculate a field. So we're going to call this aging 1 plus 2. Now this is a little more complicated. You have to kind of understand where the data comes from. But what we're trying to do here is say our aging category 1 plus our aging category 2. It's going to add the column here, and then when I press OK, it's going to add those up. Now we have a 0 because they do not have an aging 1 or 2. To clear out this filter that we created earlier, we can hit the X, and now you'll see their values here in your aging 1, 2 column. If you'd like to move that column, you can just click and drag. You'll see the green arrows is where you will place it. If you wanted to then remove the column, you just right click, go back to your column settings, and you can delete the column. If there's another field that you want to see that is not on the screen or up in these initial column settings, you can go to Add, and then pick from any of the fields that are available in your AR customer table. This is going to be mostly the things you can see within the first 2 screens of your customer maintenance tab. We'll just pick ship method. And now you see it's here in your ship method column. Another thing you can do is group by. So you may want to see this grouped by your salespeople. If you hit group by, you'll see that it brings up a new little chart here. And I clicked it on name instead of on salesperson. So you want to be highlighted on the salesperson and then say group by. If you no longer want to group by something, as if I don't want to group by the name anymore, you can just drag it back down, and now you'll only be grouped by your salesperson. This is a good way to see how many accounts each of your salespeople have, and also the balances of those. Now, I think for the most exciting feature, I will show you how to export this to Excel. It is super, super easy. You just go to File, Export Options, and Excel. Takes it just a second. And now you see here it is in Excel without all those silly columns that are in between. And all the extra spaces and things. To show you that we have done all this work, we've customized, we've added fields and all sorts of things, you can save this as a setting. Sage calls these fields and values and the customizations you've done to it as a setting. So what we want to do is hit the Save button, and it's going to ask you to name it. So this is a quick customer view. And you can save it as a public or private setting. If it is a public setting, you'll be able to see that if you are a user that has a role that allows you to see the Business Insights Explorer. Now, when I come in, I'm going to close this just to show you. When we come into our customer view, it's going to default to the standard, which has all these other columns. And I can just use this drop down here to say quick customer view. That takes us right back to where we were. To show you how this looks in some of the other modules, I'm going to go to the item view. And then show you here how we can group by the product line. You can also expand and contract these product lines. And again, we can just pop that back in there. This is usually one of the most exciting things to show people who don't realize that they have it within Sage. We always get lots of good feedback about this. So I find it to be fairly straightforward and fairly easy to use if you're familiar with some basic Excel functions and basic ideas behind how the data is put together. So that ends the Business Insight Explorer piece. I'm going to move to another function or piece that you have within Sage 100, and that would be Crystal Reports. Now, Crystal Reports is a pretty sophisticated reporting program that Sage uses inside of the product itself to run the reports and the printing. And that allows for some customizations that you may not know that you have available in your different forms and reports. So the one that I'm going to start with today is showing you how you can add a logo or change some fonts on your sales orders. So we're going to go to sales order printing under the sales order module. There are a few things I want to show here. So your form codes. Your standard form code is the one that is pre-populated into Sage. And then you can create other form codes that have different customizations as you see fit. Sometimes you may want to print out your sales orders with certain information on them. Maybe you have two different divisions that are called different names, or you have a different remit to address. Again, this is a sales order. It would be same for the invoice. You can change all of these sorts of things. But one thing I see that a lot of people want to do, especially now that we are emailing a lot more things and not printing or faxing them, is add a logo or add some colors to denote different areas of your sales order. The first thing you want to do when you are creating a new look for your sales order is to change the form code to something different. So I'm going to name this one with logo. And then I'm going to click the designer button. Now, you're only going to see this designer button if you have Crystal Reports installed on your workstation. Some people prefer to just have this installed at the server level, and so they would have to be on the server when they do this. Crystal Reports is available to be installed on your workstation as well. So if you have, or if you are a power user who wants to have the ability to edit these sorts of things, that is something that is included with your installation. It just may need to be installed on your computer. So I'm going to click Designer. When I do that, it's going to ask me up here, which is my template. For our purposes here, I'm going to hit Plain. I also would like to apologize if you hear any whining or ear flapping. That is my puppy who is joining us today. So once I've hit Plain, it's going to take it just a second to open up Crystal Reports. Sometimes it takes more than just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, so here it is. You are almost always going to get this message, which is going to say that the default printer will be used instead. You just click OK on it. And wow, I'm sure this looks kind of crazy for a lot of people who aren't used to seeing the back end. But what we're going to focus on here is the header, the page header. And we're going to insert a picture. And this picture is going to be our logo. So I navigated to that in a Windows Explorer, just like you're used to seeing. And you'll see this kind of outline here of where the image is going to go. It's going to be way too big. We're going to go ahead and click it. And then click and drag to resize it to the size we would like. Crystal Reports takes a little bit of finessing. There are, you need to make sure that you are on the right object, and then you're going to need to click and drag to resize. You'll also see that because it made itself so big, that our header got really big with white space. So this is a click and drag that bar back up. I'm going to save this, close Crystal Reports, and then go to preview. It's been a little slow for me today. I apologize. Oh, it is opening again. And here you see our logo that is now showing up on this order. You'll notice that this ABC Distribution Corp is a little close, and that may be a situation in which you want to go back into your designer to, I'm going to open that back up. Again, it'll take just a second. One of the joys of Crystal. It is what people like to call sometimes a resource hog. So it does take just a bit to open up. And you'll see it was this company address block that looked a little close here. So we're just going to click and drag that down a little. This is pretty technical. If you are not comfortable with computers in terms of manipulating fields and that sort of thing, it can be a little daunting. And we are always here to help you with any of these things. While I have this open, I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple other things. Perhaps these page numbers are too bold and you would prefer them to be a different color. You can just select them, go up here to your font color and change it to a lighter gray. You have these standard colors that you can pick from, but you can also go to more and you have a bigger gradient of colors that you can choose from. Another neat thing to do is to customize font colors for emphasis. So I'm going to save this and go ahead and close out of our sales order printing. And I'm going to go to one of our reports under sales orders, which is the open orders by promise date report. This is going to allow you to also go to the designer. So I'm going to go to the designer here. And what I would like to do is highlight the numbers if it is past the promise date. So as soon as Crystal will open up, what we will do is customize that color or set a color for that date. Again, always just click OK here. Now, if you hover over these items, you'll see the table that it's pulling from and the field name. I'm going to right click on one of these field names and say Format Field. In doing that, it's going to give me several selections up here. You would click font. And then this little button here is a formula. So we're going to click on that formula and say if, and then find our promise date, which is this date here, is greater than, let's see, is less than today, then I would like to color it red. Now, I'm not expecting any of you to know how to do the syntax for this. The purpose of me showing you this is to show you that this can be customized. It is something that we can change for you. We can help you, but if you know it's available to do, then you know what to ask for. If you don't know that it's there, you'll never know to ask for it. And today would be the day that I am struggling with this formula. I apologize. Now that I've put that in, I'm going to save the report, click close, and then preview. You'll see that because I'm using the demo data, everything is less than today's date. But you'll also see where it has changed to the color red. So think about the ways that you're using all your different reports in here. Is there something that you want to stand out to you? You can make it bold. You could change the font, change the color of the font. We can suppress things that you don't want to see. Maybe you really only want to see them if they're past due or not past due. There are lots of different options with every one of these standard reports in all the different modules that we can customize just for the way that your organization uses things. Crystal Reports is a very, very powerful tool. I always find that if there is a report that you don't want to, that you do want to see, that is not available within these reporting options, you can make one all by itself. You can make a standalone Crystal report outside of Sage. Now, you really need to understand the data structure before you start doing this, but I'm going to show you a very easy report to run. And this, or a report to create. Again, this is not for teaching you how to do it, but just to show you that it is available. So I'm going to open Crystal Reports and start one from scratch. The report that I plan to show you is something that you can get within the product. I just thought it was something that would be easy to show and to show you some of the structure of the ways that Crystal works. So I'm going to open my report wizard, choose my data source, log into my company, and pick my table. Now, we are going to pick the AP vendor table because we all have vendors. And then it lets you choose what fields you want to display. I'm going to show the vendor number, the vendor name, their city, state, zip. And then I'm also going to show the vendor status. And click Finish. This is going to show us all these information. If I wanted to group by my vendor status, I can easily insert a group for vendor status. You'll see that those groups, the A, the I, and the T, show up here. Now I know, because I've been working with Sage for a while, that A is active, I is inactive, and T is temporary. I can show you how to reformat those names by creating a formula field. I'm going to go to New and say Name. And then I'm back here into a formula creating space. And I'm going to say if the vendor status equals A, then type the word active. Else, just show the vendor status. If I pull that here into my grid, you'll see that it says active. I can also add fields together if you didn't need them or want them in one column. An example of this is a lot of places use the AP division number and the customer number. So right now, these are two separate fields. We can add these together. We'll do division vendor number. And I'm going to have it display the AP division number, and then a dash, and then the vendor number. This is helpful if you want to sort your vendors by the division and then vendor number. Now that they're one field and we place it on the screen, we can sort by that. And it will realign everything, not only in your division order, but then also alphabetically by your vendor number. If this were a report that you'd want to save within Sage 100 to show up on the menus, we can do that. We would need to save it in a specific place, which is in Mass 90 folder, under reports, and any custom report needs to have the word custom after it. Now that I've saved that, I can go back into Sage on my custom office, into Library Master, set up Report Manager, and then add report to menu. Now it's going to be this nice wizard that's going to tell us to go to which module. So we want this in accounts payable, and then we need to enter the name and the path. Off the top of my head, I can't think of what I named it, so I'm going to sort it by date modified, find my report, and then put that I would like the name to be AP vendor listing with division vendor sort. When I click next, it's going to ask me which of my roles do I want this report to show up for. I'm going to choose one and hit finish. Now that we have this custom report, you can go to your accounts payable module under custom reports and see it here. This is a way to take a report that you've created and have it available for other members of your staff. This was a quick and dirty report. It's not pretty. We can make these look much prettier in your brand standards, but that shows you the functionality of being able to create a report and then add it to your custom reports menu. If you find that your custom reports menu, that people have added things over the years that you don't want on that menu, they can be removed. And that is something that we could definitely help you with if you are interested in doing a kind of an audit through your reports. So those are the two things that I'm presenting. For now, the next thing we're going to go over is Sage Intelligence, and Stephanie is going to present on that. So I'm going to hand my screen over to her.
Hello all, this is Stephanie coming to you from Surfside Beach, South Carolina. Beautiful day today. I'm hoping to just kind of pique your interest here on Sage Intelligence. You might not be aware that Sage Intelligence, you actually have a one user license for Report Manager if you have Sage 100C subscription version. So I'm going to kind of just go through what Sage Intelligence is, and then I'm going to actually take you into Sage Intelligence and just show you some things that it can do. I know often I hear from people the standard financial reports that come in Sage 100, they're not flexible enough, or maybe the groupings that are set up, it's not using accounting terms. You can't do total current assets, total fixed assets, total assets. You're kind of stuck with one grouping title of total assets, or depending on how you have your grouping set up in your Sage 100. Basically, Sage Intelligence is a reporting utility that works with Excel, and it basically utilizes the ODBC technology to pull data in from Sage 100 tables into Microsoft Excel, where you can use all of the Microsoft Excel functionality. Okay, so basically the workings of Sage Intelligence, you have what we call a connector module. Okay, and that's the module where you can build containers that have tables, like Katie just mentioned all the tables when she was talking about Crystal Reports. It's the same thing. Sage 100 is just a whole bunch of tables put together that allow you to store and then retrieve data. So you have your connector module, which would have containers for, let's say, customers, vendors, sales, GL, financial information. We're going to focus on the financial aspect today, but I am going to just show you real quick. I mean, you can pull, if you have the connector module, okay, so that's something that doesn't come automatically with your license. You get standard a whole bunch of containers that you can work with. But if you want to add tables or add fields to the tables or containers that are already there, you need to then purchase the connector module, and we can get you information on that if you're interested. But the connector module is where it starts, and then you have the Report Manager module, which, as I said, you get one free Report Manager license with your Sage 100C. And basically what that allows you to do is then take that data from the connector and build a report on it. Okay, so you can remove some fields that it has in there, rearrange the way that things are going to appear into the Excel spreadsheet, and also you can add some macros if you want, which we're not really going to get in today, but just know that that potential is there. That pulls it into Excel, and then you have what's called a report designer when we're talking about financial reports that allow you to lay things out the way that you want to lay things out. Once it's pulled into Excel, you're only limited by what Excel can do, which is, Excel can do a lot. So that's just an overview of how Sage Intelligence works. Sage Intelligence works. Let me just look quickly here too to show you the modules and the screens. This is what the report manager looks like, and we are going to get into that in just a minute. But basically, as you can see, you have different folders in Sage Intelligence, and underneath the folders, you have reports. And the way that when you get into a report, all right, what it's doing is you're creating a template. All right, so it's not just a regular Excel file. As you see, this one, the template is .xltx. That's a template file, okay? So you're creating a template that every time you run this report, it's going to pull that template up, and it's going to pull that data in the way that you want to see that data every time, okay? Another thing that you can get with Sage Intelligence is called a viewer, okay? So if you have people that you don't want necessarily creating reports, all right, or changing reports or templates, you just want them to use the reports that have already been created. Now, they can still do some, manipulating of the data once it's in there. They just can't change the template that you've created. This is an extra license that you would have to get for the viewers, okay? But the person would access the viewer through Sage 100, which I'll show you in a second. Once you're in the report manager and you're in the Excel file, you have access to what's called the report designer, okay? There are going to be a couple of different ways that you can create a report once you're in the report designer, depending on how comfortable you are with Excel. And I'm going to kind of just touch on both of those ways. You're going to have a task pane where you can pull in formulas, because that's basically what the Sage Intelligence is. In using Excel, you have access to these formulas that pull in the Sage 100 data, whether it's a period data, which would be actual, period to date data, which is actual year to date. If you're dealing with a balance sheet, you have opening balances, closing balances. You can pull in your budgets if you use Sage 100 to store your budgets. Okay, and the connector, which I already touched on, but this is what it looks like, where you have a different kinds of container ability. If you are a company that has a lot of different Sage 100 companies and you have to consolidate them, you would need this to purchase this connector module, which isn't that expensive, but that would allow you to do consolidations right in Excel. There's also a module in Excel, in Sage 100 for Sage Intelligence that's called the Security Manager. And that comes with it. It allows you to really tie down the reports. So, it uses Sage 100's basic security, where you can limit someone even having access to Sage Intelligence, okay, doing that by the user and the role. But in here, you could then end up further locking down by report once you're in there. And then the license manager, which just comes with it, which just lets you know how many users and what kind of users you have. Okay, whether they are, report manager, just viewers, that kind of thing. Okay, so now that I've shown you that, I want to show you actually where Sage Intelligence resides in your Sage 100. So here we're back in Sage 100. Let me just pick that up here. If you look here on your modules, you'll see right there, Sage Intelligence Reporting, okay? And as I said, here's where all the modules are that we were talking about with Connector, License Manager, Security Manager, and then you have Report Viewer and Report Manager. When you click on the Report Viewer, what it's showing you is just all of those reports that have been created in Sage Intelligence, okay? And if you had used security, you could lock this down, so if someone tries to click on a report that you don't want them to have access to, they won't be able to access it. But keep in mind this report viewer, because I'm going to show you a field once we're in Sage Intelligence where you can have it not display on this screen at all, okay? But currently it is just showing all the reports that I have out there in the Sage Intelligence. And if you find the report you want, you'd click on Run and it would take you into it. Report Manager is what we're going to focus on a little bit today. And so I will click on that in a minute. When you first get your Sage Intelligence set up, so let's say we pique your interest and you want to get out there and you want to start using this, okay? the first thing you're going to have to do is set a repository, which is a location where you want to keep these templates on your server. It has to be a shared location so that everybody can use it, obviously. So I do recommend that you create this folder, the shared folder out where you have your Sage directory on the server. Once you do set that repository, it would take you into the license manager. So I'm just going to click on this so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so once you're in here, you would end up giving it information that you would have received from Sage, okay, which would be your account number and the serial number. Okay, now the newer versions, this section of the serial number is what you put in the account number. Is not really your, what you know as your account number for Sage. Okay, and you end up, if you want to get this done, you just want to get it up, just, you know, you can give us a call, let us know, and we'll help you get it going. Once you put the account number and serial number in, you click on this Perform Registration. And that communicates with the Sage Intelligence site, and then it will enter all of this information here that it has on you. So it will let you know how many people are licensed. Another thing too that I meant to point out is Sage Intelligence is actually licensed by Workstation. So it's not on the server, okay, that everybody has access to. You pay for a license that's going to, you know, and it is put on a workstation. When the workstation installation was done, when your Sage 100 was installed, these files were already put out there. So they're just waiting to be activated, okay? But it is by workstation. Now, if you're on our hosting site, it is installed on the hosted site so that we wouldn't have to install it on each person's computer. And the same thing with terminal services if you use terminal services with a remote dial-up. Okay, so let's say we've done this, we've performed registration, and then we're ready to get in. Okay, and I already have it up here. I would have clicked on Report Manager. It would have popped me in to this, what I call Big R. So you can see it down here on my task pane. There's a big R, and that is for Report Manager. And this is where, you know, we create our templates. Now within the Sage Intelligence Report Manager, it's structured like Windows. I mean, you have a home folder, okay, and that ends up telling me auto connect wise what company I'm connected to. So any report I run, unless we're talking about consolidation, any report I run, it's going to just default to this ABC because that is what we're automatically connected to. How you can change that, when you're in Sage 100, it is auto connecting to whatever company you are in when you click on it in Sage 100. So I am in the ABC company. So immediately it says this is for ABC. And it also tells me the user that's using it. Okay. If you want to add new folders at this point, you would just click on the big add folder icon, or there's always right mouse click. So you can also do the functions there. Just like Excel or anything else, there's many ways to do something. So let's say I added a folder for demo reports. And what I recommend doing when you first get in, you're going to be given some templates from Sage Intelligence. So they're going to have, you know, a financials folder already and a designer for financial reports. So I would recommend starting with that. Don't try to create your own union report, which means it's going to pull from a whole bunch of tables yourself. Just make a copy of what was already given to you, which is what I did, which right mouse click, copy, or if you're clicked on the file, just right up here on the icons, copy, okay? You would just do copy, click on the folder that you want to copy it to, and paste. And I'm just going to give it a name. Sorry, my mouse is going crazy here. Okay, and then it just takes a second and get over here. There it is. Now notice what it did was because what I'm doing is copying the template. It gave the template the demo2 name, but this stayed the same. Okay, so what we're going to do, let me just move this little screen. You would just go in, change this report name, demo2, and then apply. And at that point, it's going to say, do you want to keep this template name or do you want to assign a new one? I always recommend that you keep the template name the same as the report name to avoid confusion. Okay, and that's what it did. Okay, so now we're ready. We're going to start to run a report. One thing I did want to point out here, remember I mentioned when we were in Sage 100's viewer that all of those reports were showing everything that I have here. Okay, if you do not want a report to show on that viewer, if you, right here, if you just say show advanced, allow report viewer and external access, you just uncheck that and it will not show it out there on the Sage 100 menu. Now I've already set up just a file for this demo just for time's sake. Here, let me, yep. So what I'll do is I'll click on it. And then right here, I'm going to click on this big green run. Okay, again, you can right mouse click in and do run, but it's just as easy to go up here. I'm going to end that task because I already have it open. And here it is. So it ran it and it brought you up. It's going to bring you up to a screen that looks like this. Okay. And the file, which I will show you one from scratch just to show you what it's going to look like, but it shows you, it'll give you a home tab just to give you some basic information, places you can go to for webcasts, how-to videos, that kind of thing. And then there's quite a few, by the way, YouTube videos out there that are put on by Sage. There's Sage Intelligence reporting. There's some beginner, advanced. You can check those out. I can send you some links for those as well. Then it gives you some basic instructions here. Okay, you don't need to keep these two tabs because it is just instructional. So you're not going to want these to stay when you're creating your financial reports. So I'm just going to highlight them and delete. Again, it's just standard Excel functionality. Okay. Now, if you want to, there's two ways, as I said, you can create a report. You can use what's called the layout designer, okay, which comes with some standard reports that are put in here. I've never really been too struck with them because of, you know, the formatting and everything. So I tend to want to start from scratch in creating it, but let me show you what it does. If you just click on balance sheet over here, so as you see over here on this task pane to the right, there's layouts, okay? I'm just going to click on balance sheet and it's automatically going to start generating a layout based upon a stored format. Now, when these layouts are set up, and I'm going to change this year, it picks the year, the oldest year that it can find, and I'm just going to pick 2020. There we go. Now we have some data. When these are set up, you'll notice here that the groupings are just like the groupings you already have in Sage, okay? And one of the reasons people want to use this package is because they don't want just the group. They don't want just, you know, assets. They want, you know, current assets. They want totals for receivables, totals for cash. They want more breakdown than what Sage 100 gives them. But if you don't, if you're happy with that, but you just want the ability to get it into Excel easily, then this would be very quick for you because it automatically, when you click on this little icon over here, it pulls in the data as of the time you run it. Okay, so, and you tell it then, this will default to the current period you're in. Okay, so if you're Sage 100, you're currently in period 5 because of your closings, then that's the default data it's going to bring in, which to me sometimes also is a problem because, you know, sometimes you don't want it to run just the current period you're in. You're looking for some other period or some other data. Okay. Now let me delete this and I'm going to show you a income statement. So I'm over here, and I'm also, they've got one set up here that says income statement actual versus prior with variance. So I'm going to click on it. Again, all I'm doing is clicking, and it's automatically spitting out this layout that's been given to you. Okay, so I'm going to change again, fiscal year, and now you've got some data. Okay, and you can see up here what it's given you, okay, is the current period. Again, that's going to be the current period that you're in Sage. Okay, but then it also will give you all the other periods if you want. This is the default. And then if I keep scrolling over, it's going to give you summaries for quarters and then some ending year to date. So if you're in this one and you just want a quick report, you can sit here and go, okay, I do want the current period I'm in. I don't want all this other stuff. So you can just, again, it is just Excel. So I'm just going to highlight all of these other periods and get rid of them. Okay, so then I have this. And then at this point too, you can kind of manipulate it if you want, and then save this as your own template. I mean, that is an option for you. But as you can see, when I click on these, okay, it's just a formula. So once you learn the formulas, it is very easy to create your own format, right? So let me delete this one. Okay, so what I pointed out to you before, so here's the canned one that came, okay? And what I've got here is a balance sheet, and I've got closing balance 12 and prior closing balance 12, okay? And again, these are just formulas with totals with how it's been set up. And it goes by these groupings, as I said, that are already set up in your Sage. So if you go into Sage 100 GL and setup, you'll find your account group maintenance. This is what the default is, that it's grouping things by right here, this category. Okay. And as you know, you can't change that you have certain categories that you're limited to in Sage 100 financial reporting, and that's why this is so useful, especially for like assets and liabilities. If you want to break things out more so you can do cash flow and that kind of thing, you want to have a little bit more flexibility to pull out your working capital items. So let me just show you real quick where these layouts come into play. Okay, so I'm on layouts and I'll go manage. Okay, so here are some stored layouts, and you can create your own, which I've done, and I'll show you real quickly. I mean, it is pretty easy to do. It just depends on if you're more comfortable in Excel. If you're not comfortable with Excel and you don't want to have to remember all the formulas, then you might want to end up using the layout generator because it has the formulas built in. So let's say, which I've already done, but I'll go through the steps with you and then go back to the one I created. For balance sheet, let's say we don't like the way that they've got the categories here. We want to change our categories, okay? I mean, all you would have to do is take their layout, copy it, okay? So now you're in an area where you can kind of adjust it. Now, if you look here, let me minimize this so we can look at both screens. You know what? Let me go to the balance sheet here. Let me hide these things. I'm sorry, as you know, the balance sheet has current retained earnings, so that's what these fields are here. So let me just hide those. You're like, why does she have income on the balance sheet? Well, that's why. Okay, so you can see this is exactly like this is. Here's the assets, here's the liability, here's the equity, here's the retained earnings, total equity, total liabilities and equity, okay? So listen, I don't want this format. You know, I don't want it to have all of these opening and closing balances for every period, okay? And I want to maybe specify different rows okay, not just assets, but I want, you know, receivables and cash and stuff like that, okay? So what you'll do, the very first thing you have to do when you're creating your own is you do have to give it a company, the default. So I'm going to say ABC. And in here, I'm going to pick the year 2020. Okay, and that's all I really have to specify on this first. Now, I always recommend to show account detail because then you can use the drill down feature, which I'm going to show you, to actually see the transactions behind the numbers that are put into the spreadsheet. The next thing we go to is the text columns, which are here. So the two columns that it's set up to display here, okay, are account, which you see here, which is the account number, and the description. Okay, and I do want to show those. The only other option would be attribute, account attribute, but you know, that's just, we don't need it. It's showing whether it's an asset, liability, equity, if it was income, revenue, that kind of thing. So we'll leave account and row description. The next one is columns, which are these ones up here, okay, which is all those columns that I said it was showing that I really, oh, sorry about that, it went away, that I really didn't want to show. So remember before when I generated this balance sheet, I ended up just deleting them within Excel, but you could create a layout where they're automatically gone. And all you have to do, as it says, is right mouse click and it will delete them. So we're going to do that. Say, I don't want these. I want to get to the point where I'm just doing the current year-to-date closing balance. So I'm just, all I'm doing is right mouse clicking on these and it is just getting rid of them. So here we are, we've got closing balance 12 and prior closing balance 12, okay? And we don't need the spacer column at that point. So now we've got, we're only going to end up having two columns in this layout, okay? And now the rows, okay? This is where we get into changing it because we don't just want assets and liabilities and equity, okay? We want to be able to break down assets, okay? So we can at this point create our own row set, which is right up here, or we can call upon other ones that are stored by clicking on this magnifying glass, okay? One that I've set up is called the demo balance sheet. And so I'm going to take us into that and I'm going to show you. I'm going to set it up here, but I'm also going to go into row sets, demo balance sheet, and do an edit. This is what I've done. And you know what? Let me show you first. Let me go back. I'm going to show you the one that comes with it so that you can end up seeing the difference. So here's theirs. Let's do edit. I'm going to go to the row sets, balance sheet edit. So this is what theirs looks like. So as I said, it's just pulling off those categories that have already been set, and all it's going to show you is total assets, total liabilities, and total equity. Okay, and it's just your account category is set up. I show you over here: A, assets, liabilities; E, equity; revenue, cost, expenses. That's how it's set up in Sage. Okay, but it's very limiting. Okay, I really want to be able to do it by account number, and you can see up here, when you pick a category and A, it shows you right down below all of those GL account numbers that are going to fall within that asset category. Okay, the same if I highlight liabilities line. It's going to show me all of those account numbers that are going to fall within that liabilities and the ones that fall within the equity category. Okay, so now I'm going to go and show you the one I created. Demo balance sheet, row sets, and edit. See, what I ended up doing here was I ended up saying, okay, cash account. Okay, so I added cash, and I'm doing it by account number, not by category, so that I can specify in the rule area the account number range I want. That means cash. And when you do that, right down below, it shows you if you've got the right ones because it's showing you the description. So you want to make sure as you're typing up here, you want to make sure that what you're seeing down below is what you want in that category. Okay, so let's say I left for this demo purposes, I left liability like it is, but I could have done more with that. I could have broken down accounts payable. Let me show you real quick. Okay, so let's say, for instance, I want to insert right there. I want to do, and you know what? Let me clear that. I want to go down here below. I want to put this in the section after the assets. So I go here, and let's say I type in payables. I go account. I know that my liabilities begin with the number 2, so that's where I'm going to start. Okay, so as soon as I type that number 2, you see all of the account numbers come below, which helps me because now I can quickly see that accounts payable are 200. Okay, which purchases clearing account is included in that. If you don't want it to be, then you can limit your range. Okay, but I want all of the 200s to be payables. There we go. So I've added that. Okay, let's say I want to break it down even further. Okay, and I want, let's see, so let's other liabilities. Again, account. Start with the 2s because you know that's where your liabilities begin. And let's say I just for sake of training here, I want to just everything else. Okay, everything else I want in here in this category. So 201 through, I'm going to go to the end here, 280. Now, I know you would break it down even further going to what short-term, long-term, but just for the sake of showing you this. So now in this set is going to have 201 to 280, okay, as well. Now, I don't want this anymore because now I've broken it down differently, so I'm going to clear that one, okay, but I'm just going to have it show what it would normally call equity. Okay, so then I would save this, and I'm going to close it. And I'm going back into Manage because I just want to make sure that when I generate it here, I want to edit it first so that I know when I generate it, it's going to have the right row set. Okay, yeah, my demo balance sheet is what it's going to use. So now from right here, I can actually click on the Generate, or I could go over here and just click on it and it's going to generate. It does the same thing. So whether you use these or use the layout manage to generate, it's up to you. There it goes. It's going to generate on a new tab. By the way, it just creates a new tab for this. Okay, so now, I'm going to have to check my formula there. Let's go to my demo balance sheet here. So I've added on this one, I didn't want just assets. Let's go back up here. See, this one just shows assets. I wanted to break down assets. Okay, so that's what I have here. So you've got cash, accounts receivable, other receivables, inventory. So I've broken that down, and I know that's been a complaint that I hear quite often with the Sage financial reports. You are limited to the category for the titles that it gives you, and you know, coming from accounting, we often want different titles. Okay, so that's how to do it from a layout generator. Okay, but now I want to show you how easy it would be just to create it from this task pane over here to the right. And once you learn the formulas that it uses, it's very easy. Okay. So I'm going to start one, but then I'm going to go back to this one that I did create. So let's say, for instance, you just say, okay, I just want to get in here. I want to do my own layout for a balance sheet. Okay. So we're going to have, we know up here, you'd have the name, if I could type balance sheet. Okay. Let's, even before, we're going to do parameters up here. We're going to say company, year, period. Okay. Now, the reason I like to do this, and I'm just going to refer to these cells within my formula, is because then I can change this. If I do have multiple companies and I just want to change it to the other company, it's very easy to do. When you embed a company name in the formula itself, then you'd have to do, find, replace, and change it to the other company. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse. Here we go. Okay, year 2020. And in my test data here for ABC, period 5 has data, but after that doesn't. So I'm just going to use that. Okay, so over here to the right on this task pane, you have what's called lists here. Okay, so I want to pull in my accounts, and you can choose at this point, do you just want totals by main account, or do you want to see your balance sheet in detail by all accounts? Okay, so I'm just going to pull it in by all accounts. All I'm doing is clicking and pulling it over here, clicking and dragging, and I let go, and there's all my accounts that are in Sage 100 for ABC Company. Okay, so here's my start. And I know, okay, for the balance sheet, it just goes there, sales and all that kind of stuff will come into play because we do have to do current retained earnings as a formula in here. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of all these because I just want my balance sheet accounts. I don't need these columns over here. This is account category, the group, account type. I don't need those on my balance sheet. So I'm highlighting and deleting, just using Excel. I don't need these. Okay, so now let's say I want current period. And I know on yours, we do it a little bit prettier, but we're just doing this quickly. And then maybe current year to date. Maybe over here, we want prior period and prior year to date. Okay. So now I've got the layout set up that I want. Now I need to do the formulas. So the next thing on the task pane, which is nice, it kind of takes you through it. If you click, all I'm doing is going over here and clicking on that next name. Let me just show you. I'm just going through it, clicking. Okay, so here are the formulas. And for the the balance sheet, we're going to be dealing with balances for the most part. But I do want to know what the current period activity was as well for this. So I want to actually use actual. All I'm going to do is click on this formula for actual, and I'm going to move it here. Okay. Now, you notice up here, it's having some difficulty pulling the data because it doesn't have all the information put in. I click on the function wizard right here, FX. See, it doesn't have the GL number, GL link. So all I need to do is find the GL that I want the data on, click on it. Now, as you know in Excel, for this one, I don't want an absolute reference on all of it, meaning I want the column to stay the same when I copy this over, but I don't want the row to stay the same because the GL account number changes as I go down the row. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of the A. For year, I'm going to have it refer to the cell here so I can change it so it can be flexible. This I do want an absolute reference, so I'm going to hit F4, which will automatically put the $sign before the column and the row for me so it doesn't change, and I'm going to do the same thing on the period. Again, F4, and the company here, F4. There, we got a number, okay? So now I'm going to pull this down. Sorry about that. Get rid of this extra. So now we have some numbers, and just watch. So let's say, for instance, we come in and we say, okay, I'm interested in 2019. It's automatically the numbers change, okay? I don't know if there's anything for 2018. There's not. So let's go 2020. And again, this is current period, so it's not showing you the balance. And this is really useful when you're doing your cash flow in here because, as you know, for cash flow, you're wanting your changes, not balances, but changes. So you definitely would use the GL actual or GL actual year to date if you're doing a year to date change. for this functionality. Okay. So now let's say I want prior period. So really, the prior period is going to be the same formula because I don't want closing balance. I want just the prior period. I'll show you the closing balance formula in a minute. So prior period, all that means is year minus 1. So I go into the year and I do -1 and look there, 2019. It's as easy as that. And I copy that down. Okay. Now I'm going to change this. Let's say I changed my mind. I really want the current period balance. I don't want, let's do that. Balance. And I don't want that. So really, just a true balance sheet. You're just wanting the balance there. And let's say I just want it for current period. I'm trying to show you how easy this is. So at this point now, I want the closing balance formula, not the GL actual formula. And even though I know what the formula is, I'm going to click and drag it so that you can see what the formula is. Because if you forget, that's all you have to do is click and drag it over and you can see what the format is for closing balance. Okay. Let me just move it to this column. Again, you click, you drag it, and then click on FX to find out the data you need. Okay, so again, I need the GL number, $sign in front. I need the year reference, the period reference. So we go year, F4 it, I say, absolute reference it, period, and company. And again, just copy that down. And all of a sudden now, I have the closing balance. Okay, so now let's say I want 2019 closing balance for the year. So up here, I would just put 2019-12, and it updates the numbers. You can see why you want to use the cell reference rather than hard coding things, because it makes it very flexible for you to get in here and change the period that you want. Then you just start adding your totals. As I said, I mean, you can put as many groupings as you want, and then we can hide them. So let me just do this real quick, and then I'll show you the final product I had over here, and then we'll go to one for the income statement. So let's say this is cash. Okay, and I want these to be right, and I'm going to bold this line. Maybe I want to put total cash. Okay, and then again, we're just using Excel functionality here. Now I'm just clicking on sums and doing that kind of thing. Maybe I want to start with a $sign. Don't want those. Okay, then we want to group this because maybe you want the ability to hide it, not see it all the time, but you want it there just in case. So I'm going to highlight those and data group it. Okay, so now I can see total cash. If I wanted to see what makes that up, I can open it up. Okay. And hopefully this is getting you guys, your accounting people, excited to know that you can have this flexibility with creating a financial statement. I'm just going to format this whole column with commas. There we go. Okay, so now we've got total receivables. And these are things you're not able to do in the standard financial reports in Sage. Again, I just want to get a sum. Okay, so you see, basically get the idea of what I'm doing here. All I'm doing is first I just clicked and dragged over the formula. Once you have the formula in there, all you're doing at that point is just doing all your formatting in the way that your company wants to show their financial reports. You'd end up then using the standard formatting, page layout, so that you make sure that they're seeing what you want them to see if they decided to print this. Okay. In a minute, once I show you the final product of this, and also I just want to do a quick income statement and a drill down for you. Then I'll show you how you would end up saving this off so that it doesn't have these formulas, because if the person you're sending this to doesn't have Sage Intelligence, when they called up this report, if it had this formula, they're just going to get a bunch of values, NAs, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure to save it off without the formulas. Now, of course, you could highlight the whole thing, copy, paste value, but maybe you want them to have these, certain functionality, so you don't want to do that. But you can. That's always an option as well, and then a file save as Excel. Okay, so here, after I've done all this, this was the demo one. Now, here's what I did in here. Balance sheet. That was my start. I've shown you that. Now, here's what I did for the financial statement. Again, just clicking and dragging the formulas over here, doing the sums, the same GL actuals. As you can see, we go down. So you can have your own groupings. And again, this is set up. I did my groupings so that I could break it out the way I wanted to break it out. I always put a check sum at the bottom. Okay, and I just want to talk to you about this for a second, because when you create this report, it's pulling in. When I clicked and dragged over, let me go back to that. From this list, when I dragged over the GL account codes, okay, at the very beginning, it is going to give me all the GL account codes that are currently in Sage, okay? But you might end up adding an account, okay, and forgetting to go in here and add it as well. So what I do is I create a checksum at the bottom that basically has all of the accounts that would be here. So this is an income statement. So it would have sales, my sales accounts are 400 and they go to 999, say for instance, okay? So all I'm doing is putting a formula in here, 400 to 999, and then I'm just referencing that same company year, okay? So the only thing that I've hard coded here is the GL link, as you can see, and I want to do that because I want all of those accounts within that range, okay, to be in this formula. And I know that I have all of the information correct in this report if these two numbers equal each other. So I do recommend that you do that. If you find that an account's missing and you created this using the task pane, I have found the easiest way is just to preview a canned report in Sage and then search for the amount. Or just look through the financial statement to find the missing account. If you forget, when you go to add an account in Sage, if you forget to add it here. Okay. There is a functionality that looks for missing accounts, but it's only if you've created it from a layout generator. See this tool, missing accounts? It will only, if you do this view, it will only do it if it was created. See, this is for the task pane IS, and it's because it was created with the layout generator. And it's an income statement, so of course it's going to be missing all these accounts because they're balance sheet. But that is a function in here to try to help you find those accounts that might be missing. Okay, so that's missing accounts. Delete this one. Okay, so now what I want to show you is another feature when you're in here. So let's say you've created the report. Here we go, let's use this one. This is my income statement created from the task pane. Okay, if I right mouse click on this, let's say I want to know all the entries that hit this 400-01 account. Okay, I right mouse click, go down to drill down, and it comes up with a new tab that you can delete, by the way. If you're just researching something, you don't have to keep these. It gives you all of this information, which is, as you can see, it's like the GL detail report. You've got your document numbers, your posting dates, your debits, your credits. You go over, there's your posting comment. So right from here, you create the financial statement, you could end up drilling down and researching something, which is a really nice tool. So let me delete those. Okay, and again, all that was right mouse click, right mouse click, drill down. All right, so that was how to use the layout generator, as well as creating your own layout, however you want it. And again, the most important thing, you're going to save this. This is a template, okay, that is going to be, it's going to repopulate with data every time you run it. So it's going to pull in the most recent data at the time that you run it, okay? So the one thing, if you remember nothing else about this, is you need to save it as a template. You don't just do file save, that doesn't do it, okay? You have to go and you have to go back to the big R, which is the report manager. You highlight the report that you were on, and you click Save Excel Template. If you do not do this, you will lose everything that you did changes-wise. Okay, so you click on Save, it saves it, it closes it, and then you can rerun it when you want to open it. Okay. One of the other things I want to show you while we're in here, and then I'm going to show you how to generate just a GL transactions report, which is always nice, and also I'm going to show you another report that comes, you know, standard with the reports you get, okay, from Sage Intelligence, which is the customer sales report and the purchases report. I'm not sure if, you know, if everybody uses those, but I just want to show you that those things are available. And again, if you get the connector, you can create as many containers as you want, pulling from as many tables as you want. Inventory, bill of materials, all of those tables are available to pull in. But the first thing I want to do is I want to show you now, okay, so you've got this report. So you've got this income statement and you want to save it off, you know, for the month. This is period 5, okay? So I go into the BI tools. And what you see here under BI tools, over here to the left, is just what we looked at over here to the right. So it's just whatever you're comfortable with using. I've gotten comfortable using this task pane because it's so easy, rather than clicking on BI tools and clicking on each one of these things up here. The next set here, though, as you see, is distribution. Okay, and this is where you can set up how you want to distribute the report. Distribution settings is where you would set up your email information, so you would get that from your IT department. If you don't just use Outlook, if there's some other SMTP server or Exchange server you're supposed to use, then you would put the information down here. Okay, so that's a setup option item there that you would need to do if you plan on emailing. Okay, we go into manage instructions, and these are where you can create the different ways that you want to distribute. Okay, so I'm going to create one. Actually, I'll look at this one here, income statement. Let's say I just created this name. I'm going to edit, but you would have said add. If you wanted this to be distribution instructions for emailing, you would say enable email, okay? And then you would say, okay, who's this going to? Maybe you email it to yourself so that you can look at it first before you distribute it. That's what I would do. So you would set it up to email yourself, and then you'd give it a subject. And then in here, in the text, you can actually insert fields about what you're sending. So if you say in here, attached, please find the financial statement, okay? And what if I, in here, say, for company, then I'm going to hit this little FX cell reference, and I'm going to pick it, go back, and so now it's going to put that in there. For period, again, FX, go here, and go there. You can see, I'm not going to spend too much more time. And then here, so when you end up sending this, it's going to show that information in there. Okay, and if you want to preview it to make sure it looks okay, down here you say preview, there it goes. Attached, please find the financial statement for company ABC for period 5. Okay, this is a default file name you want to give it, and you can change it, you know, depending on what you want. I mean, you could even have ones in there, I guess, instructions for each period, so that you know you make sure you always save it to the right one and don't overwrite something that you've already done. Okay. Then once I did that, then I'd go in and select instructions and then send. I'm not going to do that email one right now because sometimes I have an issue with emailing through these webinars. So what I'm going to do instead is file publish. Okay, and file publish saves it, okay, in a folder wherever you tell it. Okay, so I've already done this one. I've selected where I want it to go. I've said task pane IS May 2020. And here's the thing that says convert each worksheet to static values. Okay, so this is if you want to send it Excel. You could also send it as a PDF or save it as a PDF. Okay, and then I click OK. So all I've done so far is just go into distribution settings, make sure my email stuff is right if I'm going to send email, manage instructions. I created the one for income statement. The next thing you have to do, because you can change what you want to save off each time, is select instructions. Okay. So what I would do, let's pretend this was over here. I want to do income statement. I move it over to instructions to use. Okay. And I only want this sheet. I don't want all of these sheets to be saved off. Now you could select all of them, but I don't want to do that. I just want to save off the income statement in a separate file name that says exactly what it is. Now I could say just financial statements may, and then save the whole thing off that way as well. Then if I'm ready, I do send now. That just saved this file off as an Excel with values. And let me just show you that. Sorry, this is just opening up on my other screen. I will pull it over. So hopefully you are, starting to see the value in these different reporting tools that you probably didn't even realize you actually had built in to Sage 100, which are very helpful. Okay, so if you look here, you see it set it, it's not a formula anymore, it's 3,000. Okay, so this just set everything to value. And I don't want to save that. Okay, so I've gone through the basics of creating your own financial report using the layout generator, as well as creating one from scratch, just using the formulas. Okay, so now I'm going to close this. And I just want to show you a couple of other things that might be helpful to you. One of the other default templates that come, so if you ran Sage Intelligence right now, if you got into it, you would see under the financials, you would see some standard reports, one of which is the GL transactions report. Okay, so I'm just going to click on that and run. It's going to ask me for the period that I want to run this for. Okay, and because of this is a demo company, I want to make sure to get some data. So I'm just going to go back to January 1st to September 30th. It's going through. You can see over here to the right, it's rendering the data, naming some ranges. Okay, so this one comes with a pivot table. Okay, now don't be alarmed by that. You can get rid of this. Okay, what I wanted to show you was all Sage Intelligence does is it hides the data source that it's using. Okay, so if I right mouse click down here under this pivot and say unhide, you see there's a sheet 1. I'm going to unhide that. Here is the actual data that it's using. So here's your complete GL detail report with posting comments and everything. Okay, then from this, rather than this pivot table, which is actually one that I created, it came with a different one. Okay, you can then create your own pivot table just to change the view, okay, of what you want to see. As long as you don't save templates, okay, on this, you could actually, save this off to Excel if you wanted, and then you can get rid of some columns and make this more in a report format than what it is. You can also change it from the get-go of what it's putting out here, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But first I want to show you one of the key things when you're creating a pivot table off of the data. There's something called raw data, so that every time you ran it, it's going to include in your pivot all the data that it has at that time. Otherwise, it could add 500 more rows, and if you don't use raw data, it's only going to be showing in your pivot what you used the last time you did the pivot table. Okay, so insert, pivot. Right here where it says select a table or range, you would hit F3, okay? That gives you all of the named ranges, okay? One of the ranges that comes with it is the one you need to use so that it automatically updates the range of cells, which is called raw data. So F3, raw data, okay. Here we are, we've got a new tab with all the pivot functionality, and then you can just start selecting what you want to show. Okay, just like that, and then I'll go into the one I created. As you can see, I just did a grouping by account number, gave totals by account number at the different sources. Okay. Now, let's say you don't want all of those columns in the GL detail report. You want to create one that just shows you what you want. Okay, so we're out here under Report Manager. I've highlighted this report, and as you can see, there are different tabs up here. Okay, the first one is just properties, okay, which is information about your report. You can see right here, which I'm not going to get into because this is more extensive, but you can add macros, on here so that it adds these macros. Sorry, let me get back. Right here, there's an add-in for that pivot table. Okay, so it's creating that pivot table right from here. Okay, we can get rid of that if you want. Right here, you would just highlight it and delete it. These are the columns that it's automatically going to put in. Well, let's say you don't need this sequence number. So you highlight it, and over here to the right, you say remove. Okay. Well, let's see what else you might not want here. Status, let's say I don't want that for some reason. Don't need the batch number. As you can see, I just want to decrease the amount of information I've got here. But let's say I do want document number and document type. Well, let's make it even smaller. Let's say we don't. So we're going to highlight it and remove it. Okay, and if you want to change the order of things, you highlight it. Let's say I want the source journal to go up to the top. I would just click over here to the right and say move up. Same with the source module. And let's say we don't want this account key because that's that key that has all the funny looking data. What you want is the account number. Okay, so I don't want the account key. I'm going to say remove. So we've got account, description, source journal, source module. Say I don't even want the company code because we know it's going to be ABC. Okay, posting date, document type. Okay, so now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to run it. And again, pick my date range. And OK. Okay, so now I'm going to unhide that sheet 1. And now we only have the columns here that we've told it to pull in. Okay. One of the other things that you notice is prompting me for a date. I want to show you here. So you've got the columns. You could filter out information, parameters. Here's the starting and ending. So this is why it's prompting you for the date. You can change that. You could just get everything if you wanted to and not have this by removing it. Okay, so you could do that by highlighting and then click on remove. Okay, you have sort fields, aggregate filters. So this would sort by, filter out by totals. That's what all those things mean. The other thing that I want to show you is some other reports that come, one of which is purchases. So if you have vendors, there's a standard one that comes in here again. So it says to edit this report, you must make a copy. Okay, I always just make a copy just so to be safe. So copy, demo reports, paste, and let's just run this. And again, it has a pivot table, as you can see right there in the add-in. And again, it's asking me for a date range. You see all the different tables this is creating from. I mean, it's pulling from, you saw the inventory table, the AP table, the PO table to get this vendor purchase information. Okay, so now it's finished. And again, it created a pivot. You don't need to keep this pivot. I mean, of course, you could right mouse click and say show field list, and you can modify this pivot and then save it off as your own template, okay? But it's letting you do a filter up here by product line, division, warehouse name. If you wanted to add some additional things to that filter, you know, it's the standard Excel pivot table functionality, okay, to remove or to add. Let's say we didn't want division, okay, so we take that out. Remove field. See, and it gets rid of it. So it's that kind of functionality. Now, if you want to see the actual data, just like we did on the GL, you right mouse click and unhide sheet 1. There it is. So this is the data that it's using to create that pivot table from. And some of you might just want this data. That's what you've been looking for, just like the GL, just a quick list of all the transactions that are coming in from that table. Now, let me just show you another quick one here from the customer side. Sales. And I've already got a copy here. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that one and I'm going to run it. Okay, again, pick my date. January 1st. And okay. You know, there really is so much more to learn about this, and if it's piqued your interest, you just need to reach out to us so that we can set something up to get you going on it. It's a very useful tool. Okay, so again, so this is just standard. It comes with a pivot. Okay, again, right mouse click, show field list, because they're hiding it. And you can change this as you want. Instead of item type, maybe you want the item number to be the filter. But on this one, I noticed that item number isn't one of the fields. So what we would do, they've got item code description rather than item number. That's where if the field's not available, which I'll show you in a minute, how to get out and add a field if it is available in the container. If it's not available in the container, that's where you need that connector to be able to add additional fields. Okay, so I'm going to right mouse click and unhide, show sheet 1, and here's the data behind the pivot. So this is just all the invoices that hit during that time period in our test data. Okay, so you got invoice date, customers. Okay, so let's go there. Now, let's say there isn't a field, there's a field that's not showing and you want to see if it's available. You'd highlight the report. You'd go to the columns and you would say add. These are all the fields that are currently available from the container. Okay, so customer, number, name, they're already there. Let's see if item number is one of them. No. Okay, so item number is not available. So then you would need to have the connector to go back to the container to decide to put item number in there. All right, I think that is all. That's a lot to kind of take in, but hopefully it has piqued your interest, and I will turn it back over to Katie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
There you go.
Okay, give me just a second. I'll get my screen up here. Now, I'm going to go over a tool called Power BI. This tool is part of the Microsoft Office 365 suite. So if you have upgraded to Office 365, this is included in your Office subscription. And if not, it can be added for about $10 a month per user. So I just wanted to get that out there first, that unlike these other tools, this is not necessarily something that you already have available. So as I start this conversation, I want to just talk a second about some buzzwords that are happening. Data-driven culture, data science, business intelligence, data visualizations. A lot of these words really represent a couple different ways to look at your data. The things that we've shown you so far today are the traditional ways to look at your data. Group your data, look at the details, make summaries. Data visualization and business analytics really take those tools, insert some different ways to look at it, and perhaps put data together in a way that is more actionable. I know in a previous job, I've spent a lot of time pulling data from different reports, writing it in a Word document or adding it to a spreadsheet that was already formatted to send to a management team. Sometimes that would take me a couple of hours to gather it from all the different sources. Today, what I'm going to show you is from Sage 100 and the data from there, but Power BI can be integrated into a lot of different data sources. And by doing that and combining data from different data sources, you can get a more holistic picture of what's going on within your data. So some things that Power BI can integrate with are like Google Analytics. How many times did somebody click on an item on your website? And then you can integrate from that item number, how many sales came from that? How many clicks did it take to get that many sales? You know, there are a lot of things like that that marketing looks at in terms of product utilization and product placement on the website, that kind of stuff. It can also pull in CRM data. Say you use something like SalesLogix or Salesforce.com. All of these things can be integrated together to show you how many opportunities are out for a customer versus how many sales have they had this month. Call center metrics. You could say for a specific product line that brought in, say, $1 million, how many calls did you get for that? Again, all of these things would have to be integrated. There have to be some common linking between them to show you. But I just wanted to kind of get your head around what could be done while I am just going to show you some ways in which the Sage data can be used. There's often, again, like I said, a lot of times pulling together information for management that if they had a tool like this, they wouldn't need to get into Sage. For our demo, I have brought this into Sage, into this Information Center side of the window. I did that just quickly behind the scenes. I added a link in the web content by going to View, Edit Web Content, and adding a new link. That could also be done for your bank for all sorts of other things you may want to add some web content. So I'm going to go here to my Power BI. Now, like I said, this was all created in the Microsoft Power BI tool. It's a little different than the way we hook up Crystal Reports or Sage Intelligence, but you need to understand the data structure. This would definitely be something, if you wanted to integrate, we should get together and do some consulting time on how your data wants to look, because there's a data model that needs to be put together. I'm going to show you some pages here that I've put together with some demo data. Don't worry if things don't add up correctly. This is all just demo data to show you some different features. While the pivot table is awesome because you can double click and drill down into things, sometimes it's nice to just see it in a bar chart. What are my highest expenses? Based on your general and admin expenses, where is most of that money going? These are all pulling out of Sage. GL by category. And then your total numbers here. So you could add all sorts of other metrics here from your balance sheets and from your income statements. This was just to show you the bar charts and how you can color code things, put the data values on, and make your summaries. I'm going to go to our accounts receivable page to show you some other neat tips. So this shows us what our outstanding receivables are. Again, what the balance is. You probably wouldn't want both of these. Which customers have the highest AR outstanding balances? Which salesperson, like the balances by salesperson. Here I have the invoice, the cost of goods sold, and margin by quarter. This could also be broken out by salesperson. There are lots of different ways you can filter this data. We have some years built in. You can add in all sorts of different filtering here. This one I really like because it's a map that shows you all your open invoice amounts by state. So we can see North Carolina has the majority, but you can click in and see California's data, North Carolina's. You see this changes based on the state that I've selected here. Our accounts payable, I just pulled a couple of, outstanding balances by vendor type and your top outstanding balances. You can do all sorts of other things you may be looking at to show trends as far as accounts payable. Our sales performance tab, I like because I've broken out your top 3 customers by sales, your top product lines. I've done a different type of map. This is one, assuming that you have stores, you can say by store location, where are my biggest sales coming from? Again, total sales by salesperson with their goal. So this line here is the goal that they are to reach. And then this is how close they are to reaching that goal for 2020. And then all my sales performance metrics here. Your cost of goods sold, your total discounts given. And as you add or subtract data in this filter here, you'll see that those numbers change. They're refreshing. And they're going to change based on the year that I've selected. You see, now we have a store in Alaska that we didn't have in 2020. Your data can change based on these that are called slicers. And we can add slicers for a product line or for a specific item code or a specific vendor. There are all sorts of different things you can do with this model. One thing that I think is important with doing this kind of dashboarding, instead of the pulling and putting on a manual spreadsheet and then sending off, is your management team, if they have access to Power BI, could just go in and hit refresh, and that will be your live data right then as what has been posted. So that will show here. Giving them more of instant access and decision-making abilities. One thing that I like to focus on when people are asking for reports or as we work up these dashboards are what action are you going to take by the type of data that you're looking for? How is it going to inform your decisions, and how is it going to inform where you spend your time and focus? If we were to look at this total sales by store location, you'll see, the East Coast, they're doing a good job. They've got some really big centers, but here on the West Coast, those sites aren't performing as well. Maybe instead of spending my time focusing on the North Carolina stores this quarter, I'm going to focus on these West Coast stores to see if we can't bring up their numbers. Same with your salespeople. You see that Nicole here is not close to hitting hers, where Eva's almost made it, and Gillian has already hit her goal and exceeded it. Let's work with Nicole and Tim to figure out what's going on there. Instead of just looking at the total, really look at what makes up the total. If Power BI is something that is exciting to you, which I hope that it is, if nothing more for the colors and the visualizations, if it's something that you want to look into, we are working on some basic packages to start you with, and then also some customizable features. I would suggest that you talk to your Sage 100 consultant and also start drawing out what you would like to see. What things are you asked the most by different parts of your company? Draw those out on a piece of paper like this, and that's a really good place to start as we help you develop a dashboard. I don't want to take a lot more of your time with this. This was really just a quick highlight preview of Power BI and some of the things that we can do with it. Again, I put it here in Sage 100. It can be run as a separate program outside. These pages can be published to a SharePoint site, your intranet site, all sorts of different ways and features we have because it is part of the Microsoft suite that we can help incorporate for you. Chris, I'm going to hand things back to you to close our presentation here, and maybe if there are any highlights of the questions, anything we need to answer before we head off. Chris?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
It helps if you actually get the mute button.
I figured that's what was going on.
We hope that y'all have enjoyed the webinar and have learned some things that are in your system and can now at least look forward to taking advantage of some of them. Most of the questions that actually came in had to do with licensing. And if you do have Sage 100, you do get the Sage Intelligence license. It does come as a separate key, and we're more than happy to help you get that key and at least get it installed and set up so that you can use it, so you can actually do some of the things that Stephanie showed. And then the other major question was regarding the recordings of this, and it is being recorded. We will send you that link by end of day tomorrow. But other than that, the questions were pretty light. Again, we do appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.